Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. I am back again chatting with Jake. Hello, Jake.
Hi, Keith.
How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, really good.
Well, it's nice to you to be back. You're becoming quite a regular at the minute.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it actually. It's something that I'm not coming after your job just yet. Actually, I did think about it last week, and yeah, it's harder asking the questions than I thought. It was good. I enjoyed it, but I'll give you a little bit of credit. Trying to keep hold of the guests when they can spin a good story is hard work.
Yeah, I actually, to be honest, I only do one podcast a week, but I am enjoying doing the podcast. And I think, it'll be interesting to go back and listen to them like in a few episodes time, because we're creeping up towards a year now of, I think we've done 32 episodes or something. So only another 20 to go and we've done a full year. And yeah, I've kept consistent. We haven't missed a week, no matter where I've been. Like today, this podcast is going to go out tomorrow, and I am in Tel Aviv in Israel recording this podcast for you, who is sat in the office in Essex. So, sometimes
slightly different. Slightly different.
Yeah, I'm sat here in a hotel room on my own on Valentine's Day, sipping a glass of champagne that they gave me in the hotel reception when I came in just a minute ago.
Well, there you go. I'm in a meeting room on my own with a glass of water, going back to the hotel on my own on Valentine's Day. So there you go. I mean, this is like a little date night for us.
It is, yeah. It's
actually these podcasts are probably the only time I get to properly catch up with you. The rest of the time's all about work. But yeah, we just get together and have a bit of a chat about travel, which isn't too bad.
It's not too bad at all. Yeah, no, I've been in Israel having a tour around. There's a big conference that happens in Israel every year, and they invite tour operators and travel agents from around the world to come over, and they put on lots of different itineraries that you can choose to go and do. So far this week, I have been to Jerusalem, I've been down to the desert, I've been to the Dead Sea, I've been down to the Red Sea, down to Eilat, and now I'm back in Tel Aviv again and ready to fly home tomorrow. So yeah, it's been a whistle stop 6-day tour of Jerusalem. Or of Israel, where, we've managed to see quite a bit and do quite a lot of stuff. But I am ready to come home tomorrow now. So, but anyway, we're not talking about Israel today, because it would be pointless me having a chat with you about Israel because you don't know anything about Israel. So that would not be one. So what we thought we'd do today is have a chat around solo travel and versus group travel. Now, obviously, we are slightly biased on this, I would say, because we are a group travel company. But, we completely understand that there are two types of travelers. There are those who like to travel in a group, and there are those that like to travel solo and don't want to be around other people. And I think it's quite surprising how many people come and do a group tour for the first time, having never done one before, and actually find how much they enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you say, we can be a little bit biased, being a group travel company. But I think one of the things that when we've discussed on other podcasts about things, I think you and I can look at it kind of objectively, and we like to, give people the best advice on kit and traveling across the board. So I thought it was really useful that we cover a topic like this, because there's so many elements to it. And I think if we can go through some different points, and if people are, get to the end of it and decide that, well, maybe they are more suited to individual travel, even though there's all of the perks of traveling with a group, then that's still something that we can help them out with.
Yeah. And I think, again, with us, it's a little bit different because currently all of our trips are leader-led as well, in terms of, you are traveling within a group, but you're also traveling with one of us UK leaders who are heading out with you.
Yeah, I think it makes a big difference having a UK guide or any guide on a trip that can, offer you some knowledge on the local area as well as a few different tips and tricks that they've picked up, from years of experience traveling. I think that's one of the best things that group travel and guided travel can offer you is just a pool of wealth, a pool of information, a wealth of knowledge, and things that you might not necessarily pick up otherwise. And I actually still get that with clients and travelers on our trips. Different bits of information and nuggets of gold that they can drop in, and yeah, we're constantly learning and evolving.
And I think the other thing as well is obviously, a lot of our customers, and when I last looked at this, I haven't done this for a while, but a lot of our customers travel on their own with us and join the group in terms of, they're not traveling with anyone else. I think it's about 72% was the last time that I looked at it. People who were not traveling, they didn't know anybody when they turned up at the airport to come along on one of our trips.
Yeah, I don't think that should be enough of a reason to put anybody off. We do have a lot of individual travelers, and they'll come on their own. And one of the biggest things that we've, kind of speaking to them afterwards is they actually stay in contact with a lot of people that they go on these trips with. So if your friends and your family aren't the type of people that would necessarily trek to Everest Base Camp or up Kilimanjaro, that's okay, because you can turn up on your own and you'll be surrounded by like-minded people that actually gives you a community to be involved with after the trips, whether it's going to the Peak District or to North Wales when you're back, or as we've had so much, people looking at going and booking their next trip and booking together as a group.
Yeah, and I think if we look at the solo traveler, there are people who know what they want to do and they're quite happy to go out and book everything themselves and do all the organizing and do all the arranging. Or there is that other type of traveler who books a plane ticket and books their first night in a hotel and kind of then makes everything up as they go along and decides what they want to do when they get there, which is a great way of traveling. I mean, I travel a lot solo when I'm going in looking at new destinations and putting trips together. Like I want to go out on my own and see those trips, work out what I think are all the best bits, to then come back and put together a group package. So I do, I enjoy solo travel, like in solo travel in terms of going on my own, like without anybody else as well. But I think, if you look at the demographic of a lot of our customers, they are busy people who want to cram in as much as they can in to their 2 weeks annual holiday, and they want to know that everything's been arranged and done for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's when you're comparing the two, I suppose. So for us, it's a little bit different. I think we get to see both sides of it. So if you and I go out and recce a trip, then obviously we've gone out on our own. We're looking into itineraries and transport and all of those details, and that's something that will come back and feedback when we're building this trip. So we get that solo travel element of it, and it can be quite a lot of work. With the group traveling, when you go with a company that's already established and they've done that for you, that can save you all of that time and that effort prior to the trip and also during the trip as well. You're not, if you like the look of the itinerary and you sign up, then you've got all of that time to just enjoy being on the trip. You don't need to worry about, is somebody going to pick you up on time? You don't need to worry about where you're staying tonight. We'll take care of all of it. So I think depending on how you value your time and how much effort you think that would be, that can play into whether you should be traveling solo or as a group. That can be an element of it.
I think as well, though, like, for certain trips, it certainly suits the trip to go and do a pre-organized group itinerary, because there are so many elements to put together in it, which is obviously what we've got, in our office. It's what what our overseas providers and our overseas teams put together for us. Like, there is a lot of work that goes on in the background. I mean, if you take my Chile and Easter Island trip that I came back from last month, there were 8 different flights in there. Like, that's a lot of components. That's a lot of transfers. That's a lot of, hotels in everything to organize to do it. And actually, some people are just like, do you know what? I'll give that to somebody else to do. And I suppose the thing as well is, when you are in a group and you are traveling together, and I think this is more so on trekking trips, whereby you always have somebody to walk with. Like, you are never left on your own. And don't get me wrong, there is plenty of free time for those people on our itineraries anyway. I feel that, if you want to go out for a meal on your own, if you want to go out and explore somewhere on your own, if you're in Marrakesh or if you're in Kathmandu, or there are days where you have got free time to decide what you want to do. And if you are the sort of person who goes, I want my own space for 3 hours, then you can head off. Or there will always be a group who's also going to go out and explore Kathmandu or Marrakesh or Lima or Cusco or whatever, so you can tag on with them as well if you are not that much of a confident traveler. And I think the biggest thing for me is, and we notice it within the first day of the trip, like, lots of people have traveled and they've done a TUI holiday, or they've done a Jet2 holiday within Europe. They've gone through the airport, they've gone through passport control. That's a completely different situation when you get to Kilimanjaro International Airport or Kathmandu Airport. Like, you suddenly see people start to panic a little bit in terms of, oh my God, what the hell do I need to do here? What is this? We've come from before the B word, like, you never had to go through and get visas and get your passport stamped if you were, traveling within Europe. So a lot of people never actually had a stamp in their passport until recently, because they've always traveled within the EU, and we were part of that. But, people now go and arrive in Kathmandu, and, it's a nightmare in Kathmandu to get your visa sorted and know which queue you've got to go up into. And there's 3 different queues, and you've got to do them in the right order, and you've got to pay the man here and get a slip of paper. And, if you've not done that before or experienced that before, and you are on your own, that could be quite difficult to start with, couldn't it?
It can be really daunting. It can be really intimidating. I know the first time I went with you to Nepal back in, what are we talking now? 2019, I think was the first time I went out with you. I did find that quite an experience. It was definitely a culture shock. It was a bit of an attack on the senses. There was a lot going on. And yeah, if you're the type of person who has backpacked around India or gone to places like that, and you're quite comfortable with those environments, then that may be different for you, although these airports and the new regulations and the rules are constantly changing. So it is just another thing to think about. But potentially you could be completely fine with that and enjoy the challenge of it. But there is something that's really valuable, I think, about having one of us, or going with a group where somebody can go, all right, guys, pass us your passports, I'll take care of this, you go and grab a coffee. And it just takes the edge off, because depending on the type of trip you do, they can be physical and they can be tiring, but there's an element of a holiday with them. You don't want to be completely exhausted and mentally stressed from day one. So we can get rid of that for you.
Yeah, I think that that's super important. And I think places, if you've only ever been to Ayia Napa or Benidorm, or going out in the souks of Marrakesh is a slight different cult. You go into the square of an evening, 7 o'clock, with your group. Like, if they've never been into that environment before, like, they're probably not going to want to wander around on their own.
No, it's that is like an extreme environment. The souks of Marrakesh is really busy, and they're amazing. But there's so much on your senses in terms of sights and sounds and smells, and it is really full on. And also, like I say, it comes down to tapping into a little bit of local knowledge. That we've had the opportunity to go and learn from our mistakes the first time we go to those countries, and we can prevent you from making the same ones. You're not going to have to pay 20 quid because some guys tried to put one of those snakes around your neck or a monkey on your shoulder. We're going to pre-warn you about that. We can show you
there's a taxi scam waiting for you around every corner.
exactly.
Like the common one is the usual one of the horsing carts around Marrakesh. You ask what the price is, they give you a price. Then when you get to the other end, they'll say, no, that's each. That's not for that's each person. Yeah. And there's 4 of you. Yeah. So, I've just charged you 100 dirhams and actually it's 100 dirhams each. And then you're standing there having an argument with him then. But having someone who's been there and done that and, will guide you through that process and just say, remember this, remember that. A taxi from here to there should only cost you 50 dirhams or, whatever it is. But
also, even if you've gone out with the group, and you've chosen to, because I think what you said earlier was really important, is that when you come on one of our trips or when you go with a group and you do that group travel, you do have the element and you've got the choice of, I think you've got more flexibility. You can either do lots with other people if you're that type of person, you like being surrounded by people, you like doing all of those group activities all of the time, you've got those options. Or, as you say, you can take yourself away and you can go for a walk around the market, you can go and grab some food by yourself. So I think it gives you more options. If you're on the fence, if you like your own space, but you also enjoy having a meal with a group of people and somebody to talk to as you're trekking on the way to base camp, then I think actually going with a group gives you more flexibility. Whereas, not that you wouldn't make friends and meet more interesting people traveling on your own.
Not more interesting people, Jake. They won't meet more interesting people. They meet other interesting people. They're not going to be more interesting. It's not saying that our groups aren't interesting and go on your own and then meet some more interesting people.
You're right. There's definitely no one more interesting than you. That's something I would. But you would meet other people. So yeah. So I think that's what I'm saying, is that it's not that you wouldn't, but it's definitely more available, and I think you've got more options.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think having the support of the group there as well. I think that's whenever you look at any of our feedback from the trips, those people that we've just had a group come back from Toubkal, conditions were relatively challenging, and it's not just the help of the guide and the Moroccan guides that get people to the top. It's also the rest of the group that supports people to get to the top and helps people out and encourages people. And I would hate to go and climb Kilimanjaro on my own, me and a Tanzanian guide. I like to have people around me when I'm trekking. That's not to say that I want, sometimes I enjoy walking on my own and having an hour to yourself, or walking at the back with one other person. I don't want to be around 16 people all trekking together, but that very rarely happens anyway in a group, because people are able to walk at different paces. They're able to, stop and take photos, and, we're not all together all of the time.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. There's we're not all together all the time. And, you do get those moments of being able to chill out or get your head down, and on summit night on Kilimanjaro, if you need to, just really get your head down and focus on what you're doing, then you do have those options. But also, our groups become quite a good support network for each other. And I think that was something that you kind of touched on that I really like, is that what we'll see happening is, as you get to know everybody better, it becomes a one team, one dream sort of mentality, and everybody's helping each other out. People will be getting up, and it starts with the little things of, I'm grabbing a coffee, would you like one? I'm going to go here, are you going to come here? Or if somebody's feeling a little bit, unwell, I've had groups in base camp, somebody's been feeling ill, somebody else has brought them down some dinner. There's just it becomes this element of everybody helping each other to achieve their goal and their dream. And as independent as you might be in those moments, it is really nice to have a group of people that are all just watching your back, and vice versa.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about group travel and going with a group travel company is the support when things go wrong. Like, rather than doing it on your own, if you go out to Everest Base Camp and, you need to arrange a helicopter evacuation and you are on your own and you're trying to communicate with your guide, like, we had it last autumn, like you rang me, like my phone went off at 10 o'clock at night. To me, I'm like, that's Jake ringing me at 10 o'clock at night. That's 3 o'clock in the morning in Nepal. This is not going to be a good phone call. And, we had to get the chap down. We had to get authorization from the insurance company that they were going to pay for the helicopter. Like, all of those things, like, we did from the ground in the UK, because it is difficult to do it when you are in the middle of nowhere without any phone signal. Like, you can't phone the insurer. I mean, you've got, there's sat phones there, we've got WhatsApp, we've got internet connections, but it's not an easy thing to do. It's much easier to be able to do that from the office, rather than you trying to deal with that out on the ground. And if you were traveling on your own, feeling like crap in your sleeping bag in bed, and you're trying to get yourself out, like, you're not going to be able to phone your insurance company and check if you're going to be able to if they're going to cover you to have a helicopter down and all of that stuff. When things go wrong, having backup there is super important.
Yeah, I think there's a few things you touched on there that I do think are really important. And it is that support network, but also there's an element of, I would say, going with a group, or especially our groups, but going with a group should give you that trust and the ability to relax a little bit and know that you are going to be looked after when things go wrong. You can trek to Everest Base Camp on your own. You can hire a local guide. I'm not saying it's impossible to do that. You can. However, we've been through the process of speaking to multiple guides, multiple companies. When we go out there, we've done these trips. We've got a really good network of local operators that we trust and we know perform to a really high level. What that means is that what we've done is we've saved you that time having to look. So when you're looking into different groups of
let's be honest, marketing's marketing, isn't it? Like, what might look really good to you in when you're sat there doing your research, and when you get out there, are actually two completely different things. Like, we've made those mistakes. Like, we've been in visited tour operators that on paper looked amazing, but actually when you got there, saw the operation, saw how they were, like, we haven't used them for for those reasons. And if you're going somewhere for the first time, yes, you can go in, head to the internet, look for recommendations from other people, but again, you are then doing the work, and ultimately you are taking a bit of a risk by doing it all yourself and hoping that the tour operator you choose is going to be good. Like,
well, can I give you an example? Because there was a perfect example of what of this happening on Kilimanjaro last year. I'm not going to mention any names. I'm not going to bring that out. But the situation was, we got to one of the high camps on Kilimanjaro, and this is normally where people would start to feel the altitude more. Not to a point necessarily where people would start to get sick, but you can feel the effects of altitude more. Now, while we're up there acclimatizing, there was another group that had been there, and two of them came over to us. Well, they were there the night before, and then in the morning, two were sitting around, and the rest of the group had all kind of carried on. And they sat down there waiting, and they came over to me at one point, and they were asking about transport off the mountain and evacuations and things like that. And they explained that, or this guy explained that his girlfriend was really unwell and had been unwell for about 24 hours with altitude sickness, or kind of along those lines. And I said to him, I said, okay, well, we can give you some advice, and but where's your tour group, where's your leader, where's all this sort of stuff? And he went, oh, well, they've carried on. I was like, well, what do you mean they've carried on? He said, well, they had the itinerary to stick to, they've carried on. They said, you sit tight here, and if you can't get anything, we'll pick you up in a couple of days. And I was completely shocked that, first of all, somebody could do that, leave two people who are, unwell and suffering effects of altitude on their own in a country that they've never been to. But also with no game plan, with no, anything like that. So we actually did kind of give them give them a hand, and our guides were really useful in taking them on board and helping them get off the mountain and get to a hospital to get checked over. But that, although it's very, very rare, that can be a risk you take when you don't know the country and you don't know the standards, or you don't know any of the operators. And as you say, marketing's marketing.
Well, I mean,
it's good.
I had the same thing on Killy a few years ago, where I stumbled across a girl who was sobbing in tears, and she was doing Killy on her own. And because she was on her own, she had tipped. She was on the final night at Horombo. Like, she had given the tips, but there wasn't enough to go round everybody because she was a single person on her own. So she tipped what she thought, and the guides basically said, "Well, we're not taking you down there. We're not, the porters were like, we're not carrying your stuff down." Like, that's. So in the end, she ended up joining. She ended up joining our group, and we got her off the mountain, and our porters carried her bags down and got her back and sorted her out. But it is horrendous. And, things like tipping are, again, a really weird one. Like, we, on our trips, we always tip at the end. Like, we'll never tip prior to the end, unless it's a multi-day trip. And of course, then you might be using different providers and whatever. But, generally, I mean, for things like Kilimanjaro, tipping is a necessity in terms of it is expected for you to tip a certain amount on Kilimanjaro, whereas all the other places we go to are kind of more like, if you think the services were great, then you can tip. Whereas it almost, the way it is in Tanzania is basically that forms almost part of the.
It's slightly more American standard of doing things. And I think we're always really upfront about that. That's something that, people will be aware of before they come onto the trip and have a good idea about that. There's no surprises, which I know with other groups, it can be a little bit of a shock at the end, where you suddenly get told and you're like, whoa, it's not necessarily an issue, but I hadn't quite factored that in, and it's come as a little bit of a surprise. So yeah, I think the fact that we do multiple trips a year and we kind of have that precedent set in place just cuts any of the stress or the hassle or kind of worrying about offending anyone out of it, because we've laid it all out for you.
I suppose, to summarize this then and almost bring this podcast to an end, I suppose if we were, if we were looking at the pros of solo travel, I suppose the biggest one there is you are completely in charge of what you're doing, and you can do exactly what you want to your itinerary, your budget, your time schedule. Like, you are in control at that point. I think then obviously the advantages from what we've been saying today with group travel is more so the protection element, the idea of being within a group and having that support network. You've got people to go out for meals with in the evenings, all of that kind of thing that you get from, and just meeting like-minded people. And I think that's the other thing. It's like, on our trips, I don't think I've ever had a bad group that I would say we're a bad group. Everyone gets on really, really well on our trips because everyone has that common goal or that common achievement. They're all very similar people in terms of what, because they're, you love if you're climbing Toubkal or Kilimanjaro and Everest Base Camp, you love the outdoors, you like trekking, you've got that common goal, you've got those common interests. So people tend to get on because of that.
Yeah, I've had groups where people have been from all walks of life, and they do have that one shared common goal, and that that can bring everyone together in a way that nothing else really can. And also, and just to finish up from this, is I think when you go and do an experience that is as big as Everest Base Camp or Kilimanjaro, and it's a life-changing experience, there's very few people who are going to understand what that's like, and it will be different on every trip. There's going to be groups that I've taken to Everest Base Camp that won't be able to relate in the same way to another group I've taken to Everest Base Camp, because different things happened ever so slightly. So as amazing as traveling on your own can be, and you are more in charge and all of those sorts of things, when you come back from a trip, it can be really nice to have people that you can relate to that had those shared experiences and really understood what it was like.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely. and, having that achievement together. And like you say, the number of people who come back from a trip and book their next trip with the people who they've met for the first time on their last trip, it is happening more and more and more. So it must be a thing. Well, Jake, thanks ever so much for coming on this week. It's been great chatting with you again. We might even catch up in the office next week when I'm back, because I am back for a couple of weeks in the UK before going off again on more trips. So hopefully we will catch up. Thank you ever so much, everyone, for listening. If you want any more information on our group trips, then head over to the website www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk, and we've got 34 different group trips for you to have a look on, all around the world. So until next week, Jake, thank you very much, and goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.